Do you know the story about sAlGhul's wife? Hello again, Bat fans! In this episode we check out the graphic novel called Batman, Bride of the Demon. Somewhere in the Amazon rainforest, sAlGhul has restored a Lazarus pit, but he doesn't want to use it for himself. He has come up with a new plan and he has a new associate, a scientist in Gotham City. His name is Dr. Carmody. Carmody is a scientist who specializes in global warming and climate change issues. He has a young son and he has allied himself with sAlGhul to help him save the planet. Like this, the League of Assassins travel to Gotham City to contact Carmody and they are led by Talia. In order to distract Batman, they send one of their best soldiers to fight the Dark Knight. However, he is useless and Batman takes him down quickly. The Dark Knight then disguises himself as the mercenary and following the clues, he finds the plane in which he arrives to Gotham. The disguised Batman goes into the plane and travels all the way to the Amazon rainforest. In the meantime, sAlGhul visits the home of Evelyn Grace, a retired Hollywood actress who has lost the most important thing in her life, her youth. Rage tells her that he can give her back her life, and she agrees to go along with him. Rage takes Evelyn to his base in the rainforest, where he uses the Lazarus pit to restore her youth. Evelyn goes inside the pit, and after a few moments, she returns to the surface, where everyone witnesses how the old woman has become young again. Batman is there as well, still disguised as the soldier, and he infiltrates into the base of operations. He tries to learn about sAlGhul's new plan and discovers that Dr. Carmody is helping the demon. Rage and his men discover Batman and he has to escape from the base of operations. Rage knows that the plan has been compromised and he decides that it's time to evacuate the base of operations as fast as possible. But first he goes to see Evelyn and proposes to her. She is beyond grateful to him for giving her back her youth, and she replies to the proposal by giving him a night of passion and love. Later, Talia and her men attempt to take Dr. Carmody with them, so that Rage's plan can begin. However, Carmody is protected by armored forces, and a confrontation begins. Carmody's young son is seriously injured in the battle, just as Batman arrives to the place. He takes down all of Talia's men and takes Carmody with him in the plane. Batman takes Carmody's son and the unconscious Talia and he flies back to the Batcave. By the time they arrive, Carmody's son has died. Talia and Batman are talking about their past, but they are interrupted when sAlGhul arrives to Wayne Manor. Rage demands that Bruce Wayne gives him Carmody, but Batman refuses. Rage attacks the Batcave and Batman fights back with help from Team Drake. Unfortunately, Team acts reckless and is captured by the enemy. Batman has to surrender and he is taken prisoner by sAlGhul. Talia then takes Carmody to Rage and he promises to revive his son in exchange for his help with his final plan. Like this, Rage takes everyone to his base in the Antarctica, where the final phase of his plan will begin. Using the Lazarus pit, he revives Carmody's son, but to fully restore his health, he will need more sessions in the pit. sAlGhul decides to give Batman one more chance to join him, and he explains his plan. First, he restored Evelyn Grace's youth so that he can marry her and that she can give him a child, a son that would become his heir. This kid would continue his legacy if he doesn't survive his final solution. This final solution involves Carmody, because Rage intends to restore the ozone layer, but the process will kill several thousand humans. Rage offers Batman to join them, but as usual, he refuses. Batman is taken to a gas chamber, where Rage will use ozone to kill him. Batman slows his breathing and after a while, he manages to break free from the gas chamber and creates an explosion using the ozone. Rage sends his men to stop Batman, but the Dark Knight manages to create another explosion using the planes. The whole base is about to collapse and Batman goes back to rescue Talia. He is confronted by Evelyn Grace, but she is knocked out by Talia and they take the woman out with them. Dr. Carmody tries to save his son, but he falls into the Lazarus pit and dies. His son walks out of the place along with Talia and Evelyn. sAlGhul fights Batman and tries to stop the Dark Knight from leaving the place, so that they both die when the whole thing comes crumbling down. But Batman is stronger and faster than Rage, and he manages to defeat the demon long enough to get in the plane and leave the base in a hurry. The base of operations is destroyed in a massive explosion, and sAlGhul is presumably dead. Batman returns to Gotham, where he is reunited with Alfred and Tim. Meanwhile, Talia takes Carmody's son to the authorities, and later she talks to Evelyn. They are aware that Rage has survived similar situations in the past, and they don't mourn their loss. Instead, Evelyn reveals that she is actually pregnant with sAlGhul's child. Well, that was Batman Bride of the Demon. It was published in 1990 as a graphic novel written by Mike W. Barr and illustrated by Tom Greenberg. It works as the sequel to Batman, Son of the Demon, also written by Barr. Now, before diving into the writing of the story, I would like to mention some points about the art. When I started reading this book, I noticed there was something odd. I couldn't say at first, but the more I read, the more I realized what was the issue. If I could define the problem in one word, it would be blue. For the most part, all of the pages of this book are colored in blue. Granted, these are different shades of the color, but in the end, everything is blue. This limited color palette is quite disturbing to the eye, especially considering this book is close to 100 pages long. But the blue was not the only issue. Artist Tom Greenberg is quite effective when it comes to anatomy and expressions. However, he is not very good with sequential art. What I mean is that the art in this book can be very pretty, but at the same time it can be very confusing. The action that takes place inside a page doesn't always lead the eye to the next panel, and the reader has to stop to look for a while and figure out what panel to read next. That is not good. Reading this book made me tired, because of how long it was, for the limited colors, and for how hard and confusing it was to read at some points. Now, it's clear why they got Tom Greenberg to illustrate this book. Writer Mike Barr clearly wanted someone who could recreate the style of Neal Adams' Batman in the Bronze Age. He already did that in Son of the Demon, where artist Jerry Bingham also tried to imitate Neal Adams. Now, in Bride of the Demon, Tom Greenberg actually succeeds in recreating that Bronze Age style from Neal Adams, at least in terms of style, because his sequential art is nowhere near that of Adams. Then there are these bizarre and overly sexy costume designs for sAlGhul and Talia. It's really strange because that's the way they dress in the presence of each other, even when they are alone in a freezing hell like Antarctica. It's just a strange and unnecessary decision. In other words, the art looks good. Tom Greenberg manages to recreate the slim and athletic Batman of the 70s, but overall it's pretty messy because of the disorganized panel layouts and the constant blue color. Now, if you thought that the art had some issues, wait until I tell you about the writing. By now, we have established that Mike W. Barr is a specific kind of Batman writer. We have already checked out many of his previous works in Batman, like Son of the Demon and Year 2, and it's always the same. Mike Barr likes to write a violent Batman. We already know that, and this time it's no different. For instance, in this story, Batman detonates a large bomb in a base of operations which is full of people. And by the end of the story, Talia has to convince Batman to take Evelyn with them and not leave her to die. Talia has to convince Batman to save a life. Batman should not be convinced about that. So yeah, the violent Batman strikes again. And on top of that, Batman talks way too much and makes a lot of awful puns when fighting the bad guys. Mike Barr's characterization of Batman was never the best there was, but with this story he hits a new low. And not only because of how bad Batman was written, because there are three main issues with the writing of this story: the plot, the characterization in general, and the pacing. The issue with the plot is that there is not really a logical connection between the things that happen at all. Think about it. sAlGhul plans to restore the ozone layer and kill millions of people, and that's why he has to get himself an old woman, make her young again and get her pregnant. What? That makes no freaking sense! To me, it sounds more like sAlGhul was doing the same old thing he does, but he got lonely and wanted a woman, which is the most absurd thing I've seen about this character. And that leads us to the second issue about the writing, the characterization. And this time it goes beyond Batman. This time the terrible characterization affects everyone. sAlGhul, for example. He falls in love with this old movie star and rejuvenates her with the laser speed, just so they can bone for a while. They want us to believe that Rage was always in love with this actress, but instead of going to her while she was young, he waited until she was old to make his move. Why? Well, apparently he just wanted an excuse to use the laser speed. I don't know, but that makes sAlGhul look a lot vain. But that's not all. sAlGhul commands everyone to evacuate the base of operations in a hurry. But while his men are leaving the place as fast as they can, he goes to have some private time with his girl. So evidently he didn't care about the evacuation. He just used that as an excuse to have some privacy? Does he really need to do that? No, of course not! The love story between sAlGhul and the former actress is just so out of place, because that is not something sAlGhul would do. Not like that. If he really wanted a son, he could come up with a plan to have some scientist create a child for him, not go out to seek some old actress and rejuvenate her for the love of her and... Not like that. This story truly showed that Mike Barr doesn't know who sAlGhul is. He simply tried to imitate Dennis O'Neil and it shows, especially in those moments when Barr uses the exact same dialogue for Rage as Denny used in his stories in the Bronze Age. Overall, this is a poor characterization of sAlGhul. He is too much focused on the pseudo-scientific environmental issue rather than actual eco-terrorism. And he is a lover. A terrible combination, by the way. Talia was not good either. Her relationship with Batman turned into a cliché and it was not convincing at all. She was even knocked out by the actress, which makes no fucking sense. Evelyn Grace was created for this story, but it feels like she doesn't belong here because none of the situation makes sense. And then even Tim Drake was damaged. He was not Robin yet in this story, but that's not the issue. It's the fact that Mike Barr had Tim Drake act as if he was Jason Todd, meaning that he made him act reckless and not smart as he should be. So yeah, none of the characters were properly done. And the final issue with the story was the pacing. As I said before, this was way too long. The previous story, Son of the Demon, was almost 80 pages long and it was already long enough. Now, Bride of the Demon is almost 100 pages long and it's already too damn long. It's unnecessary. A lot of the time, the situations throughout the story take too much time and develop too little of the plot, like the ultra special assassin that they sent to fight Batman. He's dealt with in one page, like, why did we need 4 or 5 pages introducing him? And not only that, the actual plan of sAlGhul, the main plot of the story, was revealed around page 80 of the story. For the most part of the book, we are in the dark, and by the time the plot is revealed, there is not much of a difference as the story is about to end and we know how it will happen. In other words, the story meanders a lot and doesn't get to the point until it's too late, and we don't really care anymore. It makes the whole thing unnecessarily long and ultimately boring. But perhaps the most striking thing about this book is the ending and how it was apparently forgotten by DC. I mean, seriously, Evelyn Grace was pregnant with sAlGhul's child. Why do we never hear about this ever again? It seems to me that everyone at DC realized how terrible this was as an idea, and they decided to sweep it under the carpet and forget the whole thing ever happened. Almost exactly like Son of the Demon, and how nobody ever mentioned the Son of Batman until Grant Morrison happened many years later. That just goes to show how influential Mike Barr was as a Batman writer. Batman Bride of the Demon is one of those stories that I certainly didn't like for many reasons. The art is beautiful, but that is not enough to compensate for a bad plot with bad characterization and horrible pacing. The biggest crime is the misrepresentation of Tim Drake, which is unforgivable. So, in order to remove this terrible impression about him, in the next video we are going to check out the first Robin miniseries with Tim Drake working on his first solo case right after becoming Robin. If you don't want to miss that, subscribe now and come back for the next episode. Until then, Godspeed, my friends.